Welcome everybody to our second Zoom tasting of this slightly odd period. I'm very pleased that this evening we get to introduce two new wines to the range. One especially new, but two of the favourites of the things that we've tried in this year. Sancerre is a place that's quite close to my heart. It's somewhere. It's a beautiful village for anybody who's been. And there's a delightful variety of wines, despite only being made from one grape of each colour. The reasons for which we will explore in due course with Monsieur Roger. So I'm going to introduce my my co-hosts for the evening and the brains behind the front. So you will see. If you're not on speaker view, you will see Chris Hardy, who is from Charles Sidney Wines, and they were set up by a chap unbelievably called Charles Sidney. For 30 years, they have been representing the Loire Valley around the world, and especially in the UK. So one of the great services they do is they connect small producers who make brilliant and beautiful wines with people, especially British, some very large companies, but also plenty of people like us who can't necessarily afford to spend our time gallivanting across France, much though we might love to. I'll let Chris sort of introduce himself a little further in a minute. But we also I'm very pleased to welcome Etienne Roger to the meeting. Etienne is the son of Jean-Max.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect, good. And an active producer of the wine, and he will tell us all about it, about the wine, about working in the area, why it's special, why he loves it, and why we should all love it too. Without too much further ado, I will just hand over to Chris to sort of do a little bit of a starting summary of why the Loire is so exciting for us and why he works with the people he does. If you want to focus on the people who are talking, I would, you can go up to the right-hand corner and click speaker view, and you'll just get a big video of Chris or Etienne, or occasionally myself. And that might, if you want to see us in more detail, you can do that. Otherwise, do keep watching the gallery. It's very entertaining. I recommend Ed and his baby. It seems to be feeding time. Right, Chris. Welcome.
I wouldn't zoom in because then you see our COVID hairstyles, which at the moment. So anyway, yeah, I own Charles Sidney Wines, which, as Michael explained, has been running for about 30 years. We are Loire specialists. We work with about 80 producers, the length and breadth of the Loire, from pretty much source to sea. You might wonder why we just specialize in the Loire and don't deal with any other wine regions. And the reason is because the Loire basically has, from a vinous point of view, has everything you could possibly want, from sparkling wines, dry whites, red wines, rosés, dessert wines, pretty much everything. So it's a one-stop shop really for quality wine from what's the third largest wine producing area in the whole of France. The Loire has, I think it's 51 different appellations, and 4 IGP designated areas as well. Produces 2.1 million hectolitres of wine a year, which is around 300 million bottles. So that's about 12% of the total French wine production. About 41% of the Loire production is white wine, and only about 21% is red, and the rest is made up of the other wines or styles I mentioned: sparkling, rosé, and dessert wines. Within the Loire, there are just over 6,000 vignerons, like Etienne and his brother, and 250 négociant companies and 16 cave cooperatives. So it's very much a grower-driven wine producing area, and that's, I think, what makes it so interesting, because the large companies, the négociants, they buy wines in bulk, it's blended together. You can have good quality, but it's really for mass markets. And it's really only when you start buying direct from producers like Etienne where you really get to see the true quality, and you see the personalities of the winemakers shine through in the wines. And that's the most interesting about wine. It's the story behind the characters who are making the wine, the vineyards, and the kind of passion that everyone exerts in giving everyone enjoyment in a glass. So on to Sancerre. Sancerre, correct me if I'm wrong, Etienne, but I think it's about 3,000 hectares under vine.
Yes,
and 80% of that is Sauvignon and about 20% Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir being split between rosé and red, although I think it's largely more red than rosé now. Is that right?
There's maybe half, a little bit more red than rosé, but
yeah.
there's more and more rosé.
Okay, and Sancerre is probably one of those iconic names that if you go into a restaurant, well, you can't at the moment, obviously, but fortunately you have bottles in front of you. But Sancerre is one of the names that you'd expect to see on any wine list. I would say of all the whites, perhaps excepting Burgundy, of all the dry white wines in France, Sancerre is probably the most famous appellation. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Etienne and let him explain about Domaine Jean-Max Roger. And I think fairly soon we'll probably get on to tasting one of the wines.
Yes.
Excellent.
So in Sancerre, as you said, we have 3,000 hectares, and we have three types of soils: limestone, clay, and flint. And the area where is our village, Buet, it's around 400 hectares, 30 wine growers, and we are mainly on limestone soils and a part of clay soils on the top of the hills. We have no cellulose soils on the part of this part of the area. So we are producing 80% of white wine, like the appellation. And this is a village you can see now. On the top of the hill, it's clay, and just in front of you, it's clay and limestone. So 80% is Sauvignon Blanc, and Pinot Noir is half part of reds and half part of rosé wines. As you can see, we are not using a grass killer. We are working the row or putting green fertilizer when we're working the vineyards. We mainly do the vinification. We can see after when we have the main, we have healthy and good maturity for the grapes. It's more easier to do a good wine. And after that, we only have to respect the grapes we have on the cellar. It comes from the vineyard. So we have three different types of soil. So we have three different types of wines. One's coming from limestone is generally more fruity, fresh, and the flowers aromas. From clay, it's more powerful wines. And from minerality is more important on the flint soils. The one we will test comes from Les Vieilles Vignes, the cuvée Veilles Vignes. It's a blend of two types of soils. It's half part of limestone and half part of clay soils. So we will have a mix between freshness and volume, density of the wine. It's convenient from the well-known plots in Sancerre, mainly in Buet, Le Grand Chemarin, Le Petit Chemarin, et La Côte de Buet, because we have no cru in Sancerre, but people put the grapes alone from some specific plots, from second plots, to have high-level cuvée of their wines, with more particularly when they try to have wines for long conservation, long aging, and more complexity. For the vinification, for the white wine we will taste, we make the harvest by hand picking. We press the grapes directly with no maceration, and after that, after 3 or 4 days at cold temperature to have a sedimentation, we do the first racking and enhance the fermentation with natural yeast. The fermentation for this wine, we put 20 to 40% of the juice in barrels and the 80% in tanks, and after 10 months of fermentation and aging in these two different contents, we blend the two parts to have a not too strong oaky taste on the final blends. And if you want, I will tell you about the vintage 17. We will taste with the white wines. 70s, it was at the beginning a frost year, and after a dry year, sorry. So we have a wine. The harvest was at around the 10th of September, and like it was not too sunny. It was we have a freshness in this wine. So if you want to taste, I will take my glass too, and you can see the color. We have a golden yellow with a gold-like reflection. On the first nose, with some touch of smoky toast from the oak, from the aging. A little bit honey aromas. And some fresh fruits like peach, pear, a little bit apple. The attack of the wine is round, but it's still fresh, and we still have in some ways the aromas we have at the nose, like ripe white grapes, a little bit brioche, and a long finish, I think. Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, no, I do. And the oak, it's interesting. The oak, it's not.
We don't smell the oak now. It's
what's the percentage of new oak?
This one, it's 40% in oak, but it's half part of new oak, and okay. It's 400 liters barrels to have more wines for the square meters of wood you have compared to a classic one of 228 liters.
So it's kind of the idea of the oak aging is really, or the oak fermentation, is to add texture to the wine and almost
to have
seasoning
more structure, but not to have a woody taste.
Yeah,
the blend
exactly. Because it's very well integrated and very well balanced.
I don't know how many people on this call. I suspect they're all terribly sophisticated drinkers and therefore wouldn't ever say anything like this. We get a lot of people who don't like oaky whites. Now, I think they're usually wrong anyway, but I think anybody who thinks they don't like oaky whites who tried this is bound to love it anyway. It's a as you said, Chris, it's so well integrated. There is a hint of that smoke and there is that toast in there, but it's just given this a real richness. It's a really lovely
wine.
Yeah. When you I'm going to do an interview job and say on the bottle we've got Veilles Vignes here. Can you tell us what that means and what not only
legally you can call it legally you can call Veilles Vignes a vineyard which is 18 years old, but for this one the vineyard is 30 to 45 years old.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it's 30 to 35 on the limestone and 40 to 45 on the clay soils. It's a blend of the both.
And how does the age of the vine impact on the character of the wine?
So this one maybe it's still fresh, so you can keep it with aging maybe 10 years more. With aging you will have more minerality, and you may have with a long aging you can go on petrol aromas like old Riesling and things like that.
And Etienne, with the age of the vines, obviously the older the vines, the yields start to drop naturally. Mm-hmm. So your yields here on this are around 35-40 hectoliters per hectare?
Yes, the roots are more deep, so you have more concentration and less production. So in Sancerre, you are authorized to produce 60 hectoliters per hectare. On the old vines, it depends on the year, we are between 30-45 hectoliters per hectare.
So that gives you that natural...
Mainly it's a south exposition on the limestone, southeast for the clay. And the clay, la Côte de Veilles, it's a very steep slopes because the rain is 40 to 60% on the slope.
Yeah,
to climb.
And the work that you kind of use in the viticultural work and practices that you use, that assists in producing the best quality grapes with the kind of natural organic cover crops between the vines and the loop sprays and their approach.
What we want to have, it's a soil which is with life in the soil, so we don't have to. We have to have a well-balanced soils with no adding of a chemical to have the natural expression of the vineyards.
I've brought up the a picture of some of the slopes of Sancerre, which you can see. I don't think this is actually your area. It's not Bouet itself, is it?
It is Bouet. That's clearly.
Yes.
Okay. Just to give a sense of sort of the angle and why Sancerre is so well suited to growing vines, because vines largely like to be mistreated. So something that is slopey and is as dry as it is, and you can see there's a lot of the soil is hard. It's difficult to penetrate, which in a cooler and wetter area, I think it suits it. It doesn't retain too much water, doesn't stay too cool, and gets a lot of sunshine. Is that roughly a reasonable summary for you, Chris, Etienne?
Yeah, this part is the top of the village. Is it's more high. It's Le Clos de la Poussy, this part. It's only clay soils, and the picture is a little bit old now. You have grass everywhere. It was when people used still chemical.
Okay, I'll take it down then. So yeah, I don't know what everyone's experience of Sancerre is and familiarity is. For me, this really stands out. I was lucky enough to go to thank you, lucky enough to do the tasting with Chris and Charles Sidney, and we tasted a huge, a table, 2 tables full of different Sancerres of significant quality, and this I think was outstanding. It really, when you go through, it sounds like a horrible job, and you all feel sorry for me, but if you have to sit there and try 40 Sancerre in a row, to find one that really does stand so far out, and by no means the most expensive, was a real treat. And to bring this one, we took that in. We tried again with Graham. He fell in love with it as well, and it's just a delight to share, because we've got some great normal Sancerre. We've got some lovely Sauvignon Blancs at sort of a level below that, but this really is about as good as it gets. From a Loire point of view, I know we probably want to get on to sort of reds generally. How and why does it differ from things like a Touraine or a Puy-Fumé as well?
What was different from Touraine or New Zealand or other Sauvignon Blanc from Sancerre? The main difference is that we try to express not the grapes in the wine, but the terroir. Not you have the typical aromas of Sauvignon you can find everywhere, but you have more minerality and complexity, which is, and we have a continental climate. We are more away from the sea, so we have a more fresh climate. So we can have preserve more aromas and more complexity with this. And we try to have a long aging, a long élevage on the heavies of fermentation to have more aromas, not to have a simple wine.
And I think an important thing to mention here is that Etienne's Domaine, they've always been fastidious about only releasing the wines when they're ready to drink. Because Sancerre appellation is fairly limited, with only 3,000 hectares, of which only 80% are Sauvignon. Given the global demand, quite often people are moving on to the new vintage in I think the earliest you can bottle, if I'm right, Etienne, is about the 15th of January. It's the middle of January. Yes, and sometimes you're getting the new vintage being shipped to supermarkets around the world at the beginning of February or certainly before March. And it's far too young. The wines really do benefit from spending time on the fine lease, develop kind of complexity and to really enhance all the minerality that Etienne was talking about. And quite often, the Domaine won't actually bottle until just before harvest. I think some of and in fact for the cuvées, it's even later, Etienne, isn't it? You sometimes don't bottle until the winter.
Yes. So mainly we will start to sell vintage 18 at the end of the year, maybe in September. So you will see we will be 3 years after, almost 2 years after the harvest.
Yeah.
Etienne, I've got a question from Ed. We got about the white.
Yes.
What? Well, two questions in fact. What temperature would you recommend serving the white wine at?
Around 12 degrees, 10 to 14 degrees. Not too cold, because after you smell it nothing, and after it will be very hot, it will be more heavy. 10 to 40 degrees, it will be okay. And if you can wait tomorrow, as you said, maybe you may have more honey taste if you wait for tomorrow with an open bottle.
Yeah. It really comes alive. I think it's a sign of quality. Well, it's a definite sign of quality with white wines that when you drink them a little warmer, they
Yes.
become more characterful.
Yes.
If you have to have them ice cold, then the chances are they're not that exciting to begin with.
Also, what I think is great about this wine is you've got the richness on the palate, which is really quite pronounced. There are some sort of tropical tones there as well, tropical stone fruit tones, and yet on the finish you've got that lovely kind of racy, almost salivating acidity, which kind of pulls you back in to have another sip. And I think I get that in red wines as well. If the balance of the acidity with the ripeness of the fruit is right, it just makes it a perfect wine, and it's a real sign of quality.
We've also got a question from Ed about food matching. Now, Sancerre is probably the most, the only time when you can get an answer absolutely bang on every time with food matching. But please, I don't want to steal your thunder, Etienne, please.
Yeah, you can drink it all the day, but for food, maybe all the seafood, maybe lobsters and shellfish, some white meats with cream, goat cheese naturally, and sometimes with foie gras, with the old vintage, which is aged, goes well with foie gras.
I was leaning towards the goat cheese, because if anyone has driven through the Loire, then essentially you've got three things, and they are chateau, huge, great chateau, vineyards, and goats. And yeah, it's sort of the ultimate, eat where you are, eat where it's made. Goats and Sauvignon Blanc side by side, and it's such a perfect combination.
Mm-hmm.
I've been visiting Sancerre for over 25 years, and I don't think I've ever seen a goat in Sancerre.
Right down the rest of the Loire, then.
But apparently, I'm not sure if this is true. I'm sure Etienne will correct me if it's not. Apparently, the appellation for Crottin de Chavignon, which is the famous goat's cheese, the goat's milk, the cheese has to be made in the appellation. Mm-hmm. But the milk can come from other areas of
there are 50 kilometers around Chavignon. Yeah.
So it's quite a wide catchment area. So basically, where the vines stop, that's where the fields with the goats start, which is probably why I've never seen them.
It's very kind of you, Chris. There are very few chateaux in Sancerre village either. It's surrounding.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful.
Well, I mean, we're running at a peculiarly accurate time schedule, actually. So I suppose it's perhaps, if anyone else has got any questions, but we're probably going to start moving to the red, if everybody has the red to hand, and I suppose I could do a little bit of a why we chose to stock it at Great Minds. We tried two of your reds, Etienne, this and the 2014. I must confess, I had the rest of the 2014 sample a couple of, well, probably a week ago, and it was absolutely delightful. But we thought the 2009 had some, again, some character that you just don't get from other Sancerre Rouge. So all Sancerre Rouge is Pinot Noir.
Yes.
And I think this is a particularly lovely example. Chris, do you want to introduce this, and then Etienne can go into the detail again?
Yes.
Yeah, as we kind of said earlier, it's about or Pinot Noir is 20%. You've got 6 hectares, is it, Etienne, of Pinot Noir?
4 hectares.
4 hectares. Okay. Less than 4. So yeah, it's a bit of a rarity, Sancerre Rouge. It used to be quite, well, it could be quite insipid and thin, particularly if you're buying from a negociant. But in recent years, and certainly with kind of improvements in vineyard management and vinification in the cellars, people are picking at full phenolic ripeness. You're getting amazing quality fruit. Fermentation temperatures are being controlled. There's prior to fermentation, there's normally a 3 or 4 day cold soak of the grapes, basically just to gently extract the color and the aromas and flavors without getting any of the harsh tannins. And so you've kind of, I would say in the last sort of 10, 15 years, you've seen a huge rise in the increase of quality for Sancerre Rouge. You can still find, if you go to a kind of a French supermarket, or it's possible to find a négociant Sancerre Rouge, which drinkable, but not really that exciting. It'll just be a kind of neutral red wine. But in the hands of great winemakers, and again, this is the importance of sourcing your wines direct from quality producers and growers rather than from the large companies. You really do find a quality which is frankly exceptional and puts Burgundy to shame. For example, to get similar quality of Pinot Noir in Burgundy, you're probably looking to pay at least twice, if not 3 times the price. So it's kind of a bit of an undiscovered gem of the vinous world, Sancerre Rouge. Hand over to Etienne.
Yeah, thank you. Sancerre Rouge is more, there's more variability in the production in the area because you have producers who do light reds, middle reds, and concentrated reds, and with aging, no aging wood. The one you will taste, the vintage 2009 old vine, it's half part of limestone and half part of clay soils, is 100% of aging in wood barrels. It's half part of new oak. The vineyard is 40 to 45 years old. And 09, it was difficult year because we have a 3 hailstorm during May, June, and July. So we have to do a good sorting of the grapes during the harvest. And even if you can see, we have an intense garnet red color, a little bit with red highlights. And on the first nose, it's we have a cherries in brandy on prune notes, like a little bit, and some eucalyptus would give freshness. And we can see the character of the vanilla from the wood giving a little bit more complexity. The attack in the mouth is supple, and the one showing a nice density of tannins. It's not aggressive. They are well married to the wine now after 10 years. And it's we have the same flavor in the mouth and in the nose of cherries, prunes, a little bit aromas of garlic like thyme, oregano, and lime. And the finish, we still have this cherry stone aromas, a bit orange bark, a little bit. and it's still laying on the palate, and it's not a drying wine, it's elegant.
It's
With a
got
good
that,
concentration.
in the same way as the Sancerre Blanc, it's got that freshness on the finish.
Yes, yes.
It's, that even though it's
You can have more than one drinks with
and I mean, even though it's sort of a 2009 vintage, it's still amazingly kind of youthful and fresh.
yes. And it's not easy to find such an older vintage to taste in Sancerre. The current vintage we are sold now, it's 17, 18 for the main part of the producer. So now you can taste a wine which is drinkable now. You can keep it maybe a few years more. It with aging, you can have more. The aromas of cherry will increase, like or maybe cassis. I don't know the term in English for cassis. And it will be a beautiful wine, elegant, and you may have it with some lamb, some a good piece of beef.
If any of you guys ever visit Sancerre, it's definitely worthwhile going and visiting Etienne and his brother Thibaut, and kind of tasting at the Domaine, because they do have this availability of older vintages. And when I was there on one of the occasions that we were there before Christmas, my colleague and I, we were kind of having a little bit of joke about Sancerre Rosé and whether it aged or not. I just did a tasting with them. I can't remember, what was the oldest vintage we went back?
92.
92, yeah. And it was still alive. It still had acidity. The color had gone a little bit orange.
Yes, yes.
But the wine itself was still in pretty good nick. And it's quite amazing that these wines will. And I mean, how long this red Sancerre? How it will go on for another 10 years? Do you think?
I think so. Yeah. So you see, now it's a couple of years ago, it was not so well balanced. Yeah, it was more on the leather aromas. Now it's more on the cherries, and I think it's a good way for aging.
And the fruit's coming back as it kind of
Yes.
develops, and you get, yeah.
I think it's really, it's really interesting what you said, Chris, earlier. The comparison with Burgundy, and it's an obvious comparison because it's the same grape. But when you get a really good Sancerre Rouge, which this is 26.99, which will get you a pretty a good but average Burgundy, and certainly nothing absolutely top end. And the quality in this is just, it does outstrip it significantly. There's something magnificent. And even though it is quite light and the acidity is there and it's fresh, there's real substance behind it. And as you say, the aging potential is really impressive. 11 years old now and loads left in it.
Yeah. And also the good thing about Sancerre is it's a relatively small appellation. And it doesn't take very long to find out who the good producers are, whose kind of top quality red Sancerre are going to be age worthy and provide huge enjoyment. I mean, you can find that information very, very easily. Burgundy is completely different, and it's a bit of an enigma, Burgundy, and you can end up spending 40, 50 quid on a bottle of red Burgundy, and from even a famous sort of Premier Cru vineyard, and feel completely deceived that you're just drinking sort of dried out red wine. It's like sucking a red wine through old tea bags or something. It's not, can be really quite a disappointing experience. So I mean, red Burgundy in its purest form is and from a top vintage, top producer, is incredible. But I think the consistency offered by the best producers of red Sancerre is unrivaled.
And you don't see a lot. It's not something that you come across every day.
No, and a lot of people. I mean, there are a huge number of people who don't realise that that it is the same grape as Burgundy. And in fact, the just the other side of the river, in once you move over to Puy-sur-Loire, you're actually in the Burgundy, or it's the Bourgogne district, aren't you, Etienne?
Yes, district, yeah, area, region.
Region, yeah. So it's right next door, and so there's, and you're not very well. It's a decent drive, but you're not a million miles away, and you can. The soils are not dissimilar as well, so there's no reason why Pinot Noir grown in Sancerre can't be of exactly the same standard, if not better than wines produced in the Côte d'Or.
I'm going to ask a question I don't know the answer to, so I might be asking a stupid one. Why is there no Pinot Noir produced in Puy-Fumé when it does make such beautiful things in Sancerre?
I've asked that question. I've never been given a straight answer by anyone. It used to be predominantly Chasselas, is that right?
There's 30 hectares of Chasselas in Puy-Fumé.
Yeah, but it used to be many years ago. It used
you have main Pinot Noir with Gamay in the Coteau du Génois, just over Puy-Fumé. And Sancerre was, before Phylloxera, Sancerre was mainly planted in Pinot Noir and Gamay. And after Phylloxera, it was replanted mainly with Sauvignon Blanc.
We have had a question, which I think you actually you've answered on the chat, but just for the benefit of those people who aren't necessarily following the chat, are you concerned with getting kind of labour in to do your picking over for the next harvest?
For the moment, we will see what happened. But for the moment, we need already people to put the leaf in the row now, and we find it because a lot of people have working in the restaurants and hotel have lost their job for the moment. They are looking for something else to do.
Okay, that's good.
Do you normally, in terms of the pickers that you use, is it normally the same people?
Yeah, half part is the same every year, and half part is changing every year. We use 30%. We make part of the harvest by machine picking. About half part of the vineyard is harvested by machine, and half part by hand picking. We do all the red vines by hand picking. The old vine in Sauvignon Blanc, where it is too young or old vineyard, it's by hand picking, and where it's too steep to climb with a machine. So the harvest occurs 2 weeks, and half part is made by machine and half part by hand.
There's lots of volunteers here if you ever find yourself short.
With pleasure.
Just pay everyone with wine. I'm sure that will. Yeah, it's very good.
So, does anybody have any more questions for Etienne, or for Chris, or even for me in desperation? We can probably get to the point of unmuting if you'd like to. I think we've sort of done the lead bit. Let's start the Q&A. Oh, so timid.
How do you unmute? You haven't unmuted, I don't think.
Well, I think if you unmute it, I can unmute. I don't want to unmute everybody because it would unmute Graham, and then the whole shop will.
Oh right, okay.
Peter, hello.
Peter, because it's linked to me. Peter, yeah, he thinks you're going to say something.
No, very nice. We enjoyed both the white and the red. Yeah,
You've done very well. Yeah.
Thank you, Etienne.
Thank you. Thank you for being there.
Michael, lovely.
Thank you.
It looks as though the next branch of Great Minds is going to be Great Minds Tours.
Yes.
And great picking adventures you could also do.
Yeah, an immense. Yeah, a sideline, Michael. You get a new diversification.
A minibus.
That's
Yeah,
what I just.
all the Loire River to do, it will be long.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful. I oscillate between which is my favourite really here, the white and the red.
Yeah.
I sort of when I try the red, I think, well, it must be the red, and then you go back to the white and all of that body and that length of the finish and the layers of complexity.
Don't unmute Ian. That's what I'm saying. How many balls does it have? Yeah.
Inga, we've got about 60 of each, I think.
Okay.
But we can place another order in
Yeah.
them. Ah,
It's not a problem.
I'll see us through the next week. Yeah.
we've been joined by Graham.
Ah, hello, Graham. Can't see him.
You're on mute.
No, he's
Hello, everybody.
unmuted now. Hi, Graham.
So I'm gate crashing the tasting at the end, but it's just quieting down. So I'm a little bit behind, just starting on the white now. But it's absolutely glorious. I've had it out of the fridge for sort of 40 minutes, and it's sort of perfect temperature, really. I think.
Because it's on speaker. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been selling these two wines tonight, Graham?
Naturally, I've been telling a lot of people about them and doing my bit for Etienne. They sell themselves, though. Truth be told, I think, it's remarkable quality. For me, it's that depth of fruit flavour in the Blanc, which is remarkable for a Sancerre. I really enjoy that, and to have a red in store with such age, and it's so interesting. And I caught a little bit as I was serving someone about the similarities with where Sancerre is, how close we really are to Burgundy and how Pinot Noir can thrive. And I think that, that's very true. And it's something not even I necessarily realise. But it's a fantastic wine.
Mm.
Excellent. Etienne, I just seen another question asking how many, or what's the total production on an average?
I will do it. It will be. We produce around 200,000 bottles per year. We have 28 hectares in Sancerre, and we have 6 hectares in Mentou-Salon, which is a closer appellation. 15 kilometers from Sancerre, which is smaller. It's 300 hectares. And the both is 200,000 bottles. And 80% of white wines. And so Mentou-Salon, it's the same grapes, Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir.
And your Mentou-Salon vineyards are all planted in Morog?
Morog, yes. Morog.
The best
the closer
area.
part of the appellation, which is close to Sancerre.
Yeah.
It's 15 kilometers.
And does that give you any problems or issues with oxidation with the transport? Because if it's
because
kilometers, it's
part is made by hand. The part which is by hand, there's no problems. And when we put by machine, we don't have a maceration. We pump the juice directly in the tank. We pump the juice directly in the tank and bring back only the grapes with the juice.
okay.
Juice and grapes are separated during the transport, and it's only 20 minutes to come back to it here. It's not so far.
You got a very fast tractor then.
No, it's on tracks, The juice
in trucks in Seatown.
Yeah.
And the prospects for the 2020 vintage.
Yes. Well, for the moment, it could be the earlier year we have never had, because it was very hot, very dry, and what we explained now, we could be in harvest on the 25th of August. It's like,
Wow.
and we never see that before. If you can compare, in the 70s, the harvest, the average was the middle of October. For now, 10 years, it's the middle of September. And it's earlier and earlier every year with the global warming. So the one we produces in the 70s, beginning of the 80s, were not so ripe as now, with more acidity. Now we have more higher level of sugar, so more higher level of alcohol, more full-bodied wines with a little bit less acidity, not so vegetables as they were with the Sauvignon Blanc, more citrus fruits, exotic aromas, and if it could be a problem now if it's we are harvesting in August. We don't know what it could give for the moment. We will see, because more it's early, more generally more you have hot degrees and less acidity. So
Yeah.
you have to find the good time to have a well-balanced grapes.
But a lot could change between now and then. I mean, if June, July, and August are a bit cooler than usual, I mean, everything could slow down a bit. And
yes, I hope we will have a cool June. Because if the aromas, the production of the aromas is mainly in August during the nights. And so if you have a hot night, you need fresh nights to keep aromas and freshness, acidity.
Yeah.
If you have warm nights, you will lose acidity and the aromas won't stay in the grapes. So we will see. Wait and see.
But also that's where the age of the vines, because even if there's hot temperatures and a bit of hydric stress, the older the vines, the deeper the roots are, and that kind of,
yes,
they will find water, and
they will find water. Yes,
and
we have
you
the
kind
case
of
in 08, because the first 6 months of 08 we have no rains, and after just a little in June or July, and we say it will be difficult for vineyards, and at the end when we do the harvest, we have a good juice with a good quality, good quantity, so roots find the water. You're right.
Yeah.
The problem was just for the new vineyard which we just planted 1 or 2 years ago. They was not producing for the moment, but they suffer from the warm weather.
Fabulous.
Excellent.
So, well, I mean, I think
it's different with the long opening. It's
yeah. I think from well, certainly from the reception from all of the chat, it seems like the wines have gone down very well, and it's been lovely from a personal view to have an excuse to revisit them and open the wine again. If anyone else has got any questions, do chip in. But otherwise, I suppose we're probably drawing to an end, and so it's. I guess it's a chance to say thank you very much, everybody, for coming, for signing up, for taking a little punt. I very much hope you have enjoyed the wines as much as you've appeared to. I hope you carry on, have some dinner, and the wines go perfectly with them, which I think there's a pretty good chance that one of them will, even if the other one doesn't. I think it's a opportunity. Very difficult to do rounds of applause on Zoom. But you can do them visually. For Chris and Etienne, thank you both very much for joining us on your Friday evenings.
Thank you.
Not at all. Been a pleasure.
Thank you to all of you.
And thanks, guys. We're the shops are the doors are open, so we might see some of you again in the coming days. Shut Sunday, Monday, but opening thereafter for 4 till 7, open tomorrow. Still delivering. And it's been great. Loads of praise through all of the chat for both of you. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks everybody, and we will see you. I'm sure we'll do another one soon. This was the most obvious one. This was the one we wanted to do first. We just needed to get the red across, so we did a different one first. So the next one we shall have to plan. But if you'd like to join us, you'd be most welcome. And thank you for making it such a genuinely pleasurable experience for both of us. From YouTube presenting and everybody who joined us, thank you very much. See you soon.
Excellent. Cheers. Have a good
Bye.
weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks very much.